It is late November 2020, and it's been about 2 years ago since I made the last video concerning the subject of Richard Eugene Hickock, Mack Nations, and High Road to Hell. In the summertime in June of 2020, I received a notification from a person up in Topeka, Kansas, that they had something that belonged to my father, and their wish was that they wanted to return that to me. I had never spoken to this individual, met them in person. I didn't know them, and so I really appreciated the heads up, and they sent something to me through the mail that was written in the summertime of 1961 by my father, Mack Nations. I'll go into detail a little bit more about that person, who I am truly grateful to for their decision to give that to me. They didn't ask anything in return. They merely wanted to give me something that they thought I should have. And in this day of age, I really sincerely appreciated them doing that, because I wouldn't make this video or any other ones concerning my father and this subject otherwise. But now that I have it, the main question over the last 60 years of my life, since December 24th, 1968, and the disappearance of this manuscript in the russet chocolate covered manuscript cover. In the middle of that book, it was titled High Road to Hell by Mack Nations. And now I can present about 85 pages of the original book for no other reason than for my father's sake. I'll read it to you. I won't publish it. I won't allow other people to have what I have to take and try to make money off of after this is revealed on these tapes. But I'm going to share it with the people because you have been misled about the authenticity of a book called In Cold Blood. I'll let the book that I read you, it'll send up bells and whistles inside your minds. I am expecting the people that watch these videos to have read this book, probably are very familiar with it. And I think you're going to notice things about what I read to you that was written years before In Cold Blood was written. And I'll let you determine who wrote that story and the originality of my father's work compared to Truman Capote's. This subject is going to have to go back, and a lot of people that watch this will not relate well to 60 years ago, but nonetheless, that's when this took place, and so therefore it's important for me to set the groundwork of 1961, where my father was, what he was doing at that time, and how his story began with this individual named Richard Eugene Hickock. In February of 1961, my father, while working for the Wichita Eagle newspaper there in Kansas, was in Topeka, Kansas, covering the Kansas legislature. And while he was up there, he had a chance to go over to Lansing, Kansas, where Kansas State Penitentiary was, with some type of a legislative committee from the state of Kansas that was going to go over there to the prison. And while he was there, he was allowed to interview 4 of the inmates that were currently on death row, and segregated and separated in a different building from the regular population. And he did that. One of those individuals was Richard Eugene Hickock. This article is a copy of the original February 23rd, 1961 article written by my father, and what it details there is Lowell Lee Andrews, another killer on death row that was sentenced to hang by the state of Kansas for killing his family. Here is another individual named Earl Wilson, a very young man that my dad interviewed, and the article appeared in the Eagle at the same time that this other one did, approximately February of 1961. And he also taught pretty extensively to Richard Hickock that day at the prison. The other individual that my father attempted to interview was Perry Edward Smith. Mr. Smith declined to talk to my dad, and so that interview really never amounted to much of anything. My father's conclusion about Perry Smith was he was the type of individual, my father said, that you might invite home after church, and when the dinner had been cleared from the table, Mr. Smith would then proceed to kill your entire family. So, saying that, that is the origins of my father's relationship, how he was introduced to this individual over there at KSP, and at that particular time, pardon me, when my father went there, in the early winter months of 1961, Richard Hickock made it known to my father that he was very interested in finding somebody that would help ghostwrite his life story, help him to edit it and to get it published. And my father, being a career newspaper man, also an owner of many small newspapers in Kansas and a publisher, told him that he would be interested in doing something like that if it could be worked out. And it was worked out, and I'll get to that in a little while. I'm going to set the tone for the story my dad wrote, and then I'll read it to you chapter by chapter without interruption. But I think this is important on this first video to go back to a few things so that people who are not familiar with my father can be a little bit more familiar with him as a person, as a newspaper investigative reporter, and also the only other person to ever directly speak to Richard Eugene Hickock at length The very first person to do that, actually, was my dad, and he got that original story from him, and I have proof of it now, because the question would always come up when I would talk to them about this, or try to, maybe they might call me or ask me questions about this. They would always be rather compelled by what I had to tell them, but it would always come back to the same thing: where is the book at? And even though I don't have the original finished copy by my father that was submitted to Random House back in the fall of 1961 and rejected by them, that copy, that single copy with Richard Eugene Hickock's written initials in the right-hand corner of each type page of that manuscript, I don't think I'll ever be able to retrieve. I've looked for it, and other family members have looked for it. I tried to look for it again here about 8-9 years ago, and I contacted my stepmother's family out in western Kansas concerning this, and they really couldn't help me with that. A couple of them had read the manuscript and told me they were old enough to remember it, and told me it was really written well, but that after my dad found out that Random House was going with Truman Capote, that was the end of that. However, I'll go back to 1961, and as these tapes unfold, maybe some of this will be making a little bit more sense along the way. My father, after he wrote these articles for the newspaper, there was an agreement made by Richard Eugene Hickock and the Kansas State Penitentiary. Tracy Hand was the warden's name up there at the time of 1961, and they had made a verbal agreement of some kind that allowed my father to come up there and interview Richard Hickock basically pretty freely. Now, as I told you 4 years ago, in the original tapes that I made, the original videos, there's no evidence anywhere to support that my father ever went into the Kansas State Penitentiary to interview Richard Hickock even one time. But he did, and he was up there for months doing that, in addition to receiving written correspondence that the penitentiary was very aware of, that was being mailed to my father, most of which I am certain that they opened up and looked at before it ever went down to Wichita, to the Wichita Eagle, where my dad had the letters sent to him. And I still have in my possession 4 of those handwritten original 1961 letters in June, one being June 15th, 1961, another one June 17th, 1961, another one June 19th, 1961, and the last one that I have is dated June 23rd, 1961, from Richard Eugene Hickock, inmate number 14746 at Lansing, Kansas, on death row. few years ago, the letters that I turned into the Kansas State Historical Society up in Topeka, Kansas for people to view. They could buy copies of that, but approximately a year or two before that, I made my first visit there in person to that agency, and I took with me the original mail magazine. As far as I know, I probably have one of the only ones left. It's not a copy, it's an original from December 1961, and it has the article that my father sold to that magazine, titled "A Condemned Killer Tells How He Committed America's Worst Crime in 20 Years, as told to Mack Nations by Richard Eugene Hickock." Okay, so I have the original letters. I allowed this article and the face of it to be copied at the agency that day. They had never seen it. I also had taken the 4 original Hickock letters from 1961 to my dad at the Wichita Eagle and Beacon with me, and they also made copies of those. The other letters that I submitted to that agency, I didn't sell any of these to them. I wanted a record that this had happened, and I entrusted that agency with this material. I wasn't interested in selling it. I wasn't interested in profiting from it. I just wanted it recorded and on record up there so that years and years from now, I am certain that this subject will still be looked at, read about, combed through by all types of people, academic-wise and regular people, journalists, etc., etc. Anybody that's got a notion to, they can go up there and find all of that. They can buy copies of the things that I donated. They can pay the agency to make the copies if they want to have them themselves. One thing that I would like to say about the mail magazine that I have, inside of that, this would have been about 1980, and I was at my mother's apartment up there in Pratt, Kansas when she was alive, and inside that mail magazine I found this particular kind of torn in half page here. Back in the 1960s, when somebody was going to make a rough draft, they often used this type of a paper to type on because they were going to make corrections, and this was just things so that they could save their thoughts on when they were writing an article or something that they were trying to get published. And this is from my dad's typewriter there in Wichita at the same time that we're talking about in 1961. I do want to read this to you. It says, I was taken, this is Hickock talking, I was taken to the top floor of the courthouse where the jail is located and locked in a cell away from the rest of the prisoners. I didn't know what to expect from the crowd outside. This is in Garden City after the prisoners had come back with the KBI to Garden City. I had heard of incidents where men were taken from a jail and hung to the closest tree. But the night proved uneventful as far as we were concerned. But I decided to wait a while and see what developed. I had a visit by my dad and brother. I want you to listen to this. I had been at Garden City about 2 or 3 weeks when they came to see me. One of the first questions my dad asked me was if I was paid for it. I told him no, that it wasn't anything like that. He then proceeded to tell me how he had been questioned as to the possibility of me having any large sum of money. He told me how 3 different men had asked him the same thing. This was found by myself in my mother's apartment in Pratt, Kansas, inside that mail magazine, and it was in a closet, just in a closet, taking up space along with clothes that people didn't wear, etc., etc. And my mother had gotten quite sick, and I went up there to spend some time, and while I was up there, I just was doing what people do when they're visiting for somebody that's in the hospital. They go home, and you know, I'm away from where I live, so I wanted to kind of look and see if there was some old pictures, etc., etc. And that's when I found this stuff. And I took it home. I didn't want anything to happen to it. I realized the importance of that. And I remembered all of that from way back in 1961 when I was just a little boy. Okay, finally, this is one of the original envelopes that Richard Eugene Hickock used in June 20th, 1961 to mail one of the letters that I showed you or held up, and that's an original envelope with the killer's handwriting on it as well. I'll go back to one of these letters in just a few minutes, but I want to cross some things out along the way. I want to go back to when Richard Hickock was in Kansas State Penitentiary the first time, before the incident out there in Holcomb, Kansas, that got him on death row. This was a parole information form from November 10th, 1958 for Richard Hickock, and he is wanting to see the parole board in February of 1959, and so he's filling this information out, and he's telling them who he has around to help support him and what he's going to do if he gets paroled, where he's going to live and what he's going to do for work. And so I'm going to read this to you. I want you to pay attention to this. I am going to farm with my father. He is going to buy some more land or rent so that I may be able to do so. I have 3 boys, and I will definitely take care of financially. My wife is married again. I have been married twice, but I don't want anything to do with my second wife. My second wife, period. I can and will live down my parole. This is intent, is what I'm trying to establish here. This is what Richard Hickock is telling the Kansas penal people and parole board. This is why he's petitioning for parole. If he can get out, this is what I intend to do. I want to support my 3 kids. I want to work. I'll probably live there with my parents on the farm, and that's where I'll be doing the work to help them because they're a little bit older, and I want to help my parents as well financially. He was not allowed to have that hearing. On April 23rd, 1959, Dick Hickock wrote then Governor Docking of the state of Kansas, and what he is saying in here is, I am asking you that you might give me some consideration so that I could see the parole board earlier and perhaps get out of here so that I can help my dad. And I have found out that he isn't well, and I have a younger brother, but he's married and has some kids, and he's not really able to help my parents. And he says, I saw the parole board in February and received an additional 6 months. He said he couldn't figure out why, because he hadn't been in trouble since he was in prison. But here, and he goes on to express all this stuff about why he wants to leave, or why he's asking the governor to grant this. And I want to get down here to the very end of this. I am asking for another break, not so much for myself, but for my folks, because I don't have much more time left to flatten, which means to serve. What I am asking for is this: I would like to be placed on the June parole board. I know it isn't much longer till August, but I could do so much more on the farm during the summer for my dad. Again, bringing up his parents that he wants to help. My lawyer tells me that I will not be convicted on the charges in Wyandotte County. If you could do this, with God as my witness, I will not betray your trust. If you will, please write me with your decision. Thank you, Richard E. Hickock, there on in the population of KSP. This is Richard Hickock. This is what he's wanting to do as of April 1959. Okay, the governor didn't take any action on that, and so it got to be June, and Richard Hickock is again submitting a parole plan so that he can see the parole board and hopefully be released from the penitentiary. He says on June 1st, 1959, my father is going to be unemployed and not able to farm. My plans are this: to live with my folks and do the farming of my people's farm. I feel that it is a good way to live down my parole, also to be able to support my children financially. So this is the second time he's petitioning, and he did get that parole hearing later on in August, and he was going to see them the 7th of August 1959, and he was later paroled from that hearing. Now, I want you to listen to something. This is important as well. This is after the murders in Holcomb, Kansas. And this is after the trial. This is when Dick Hickock is already back up at Lansing on death row for the 4 murders. And this is from a classification officer. These people are very experienced in interviewing inmates that come into the penitentiary, whether this is the first time they've been in or whatever their background is, and they have a real good feel for the job because of their experience. This is what this man said at the end of this impression. This is concerning Richard Hickock. He wrote, "A wanton antisocial who planned a crime while confined in the institution that resulted in wholesale murder. Subject is dangerous and capable of any commission that will accomplish his desires." I think that this is really important, that this series of what Dick Hickock is trying to present himself as and what Dick Hickock actually did are far different things. And with that preface in mind, this is 3 days later. This is a quote taken from the Hutchinson News, November 18th, 1959, 3 days after the murders in Holcomb, Kansas. It's an editorial comment. It reads, $1,000 reward. The circumstances of the crime lead to these premises. More than one person was involved. They planned carefully in advance, in a thorough way that doesn't suggest a maniac. The murders were not a byproduct of a robbery. The victims were no chance ones. End of quote. That continues on, but this was the paragraph in there that I wanted to read to you. This is 3 days after. This is a newspaper man concluding this. The investigation of this crime has just begun. None of the photographs or any of the stuff out there in Garden City, this is all at the very, very beginning of all that, by the local police, the Sheriff's Department, and the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. But yet this editor of the Hutchinson News made some very profound and prophetic comments in this little paragraph that I just read to you. I want to read a couple of more things to you in this first part of this tape, because what I'm trying to do is connect a bunch of information from 1961, and then the next videos that I make will be from the direct text of High Road to Hell. But I think it's important for me to do this so that you'll understand a little bit of what's really going on at the time that this is all taking place. This is looking back 60 years, and there's a lot of water under the bridge since then. This is taken from the Mail magazine that I held up, and it's relative because the story that I'm going to read from what this man sent to me from 1961 that was written by my dad is different than what was printed in Mail magazine. And it was edited by that magazine after my dad sold it to him, and therefore the story is not all of Mack Nations. It is of someone else that took Mack Nations' story and changed it to suit their wants. In the interest of perhaps understanding better the workings of the criminal mind, Mail, the magazine, presents a mass killer's own story in his own words, the most hair-raising expose ever to appear in an adventure magazine. And then it goes on to say, by Richard Eugene Hickock as told to Mack Nations. And I have proof that there's part of this that they changed for their own reasons. This is at the end of this preface by my father before the story actually begins. It says, the final paragraph, but in the end, this is written by supposedly my dad, and I have proof that some of it was and some of it's been changed. But in the end, you will undoubtedly conclude, as I did, that Richard Hickock is a product of your society and mine. He is responsible for his deeds. We are responsible for understanding what he did and why he did it, in the hope that someday we can help his kind to rid themselves of the black desires that tormented them. That final sentence there, my father did not write. This is what my father wrote. It's at the very end of this magazine article, and it's also a part of the original draft taken from what I'm going to read to you later on. It's at the very end of the Mail magazine article, and this is very, very important. I want you to remember what I told you that classification officer said. I want you to remember what Dick Hickock told the parole board what he was going to do after he got out of prison. But that wasn't what happened. This is what happened. This is at the trial out in Garden City in March of 1960. It was about this time that I was taken down to the courtroom. My father wrote this. The jury had only taken about 25 minutes to deliberate, but the judge was out feeding his horses, and we had to wait until he got back. Every other time I was taken to the courtroom, the handcuffs were taken off, but this time they stayed on, and I was kept cuffed to the undersheriff. When the verdict was given and the jury said the punishment was to be death, I wasn't surprised. I leaned over to the undersheriff, and I couldn't help laughing when I told him it was what I expected. I want you to remember that he said that. I want you to remember that Dick Hickock laughed when he heard the verdict from the jury. When the judge was telling the jury what a good job they had done, I thought these pompous old ginks were the lousiest looking specimens of manhood I had ever seen. Old cronies that acted like they were God or somebody. God spelled capital G-O-D. Right then, I wished every one of them had been at the Clutter House that night, and that included the judge. I would have found out how much God they had in them. If they had been there and had any God in them, I would have let it run out on the floor. I thought, boy, I'd like to do it right here. Now there was something that would have really stirred them up. When the jury filed out of the courtroom, not one of them would look at me. I looked at each one in the face and I kept thinking, look at me, look at me, look at me. But none of them would. And that's how the magazine article that my father submitted to Mail magazine in December 1961 ends. And that's how I'm going to end this first video, because I think that's a good place to stop. And when I come back and make the second one, we'll begin with the story that my father wrote originally back in probably May of 1961, and I'll read it just as he wrote it, with the handwritten corrections in the margins and some of the paragraphs crossed out, word corrections, etc., etc. I will read it verbatim because I want his story to be heard at last. So thank you for watching the first video, and the second one I'll have ready within probably a week of today, and I'll put them up in December. My father was born on the 6th of December. He would have been 101 years old on that date, and I am going to post these videos consecutively around that timetable, so that they will be close to each other and accessible to the public. Thank you for watching, and I'll be making the second video soon.